So, what do you think about the costs to go racing? Was it kind of an eye opener, or is it just like how would you say that's different from doing a track day? I guess.
I mean, with the track days, well, you're locked in for a cost for the track day. Like if I'm doing two
Yeah.
days, at Jennings, for example, it's only going to be a few $100s. I mean, they have the best prices, but with the race, and I mean the races are fixed prices too, but you have to spend more to prepare. Um, and that you're going to spend more with the bike preparation. I mean, the fixed cost is going to be however many races you want to enter, and then you will need to get a transponder too, which you can either buy your own or you can rent one. So that's going to be
Hmm.
fixed. Now, how much you want to spend on tires and how many sets of tires you want to run, and then the bike prep before that, changing the oil and getting all your fluids. That's where it gets kind of expensive. Um, on average, I would say that the average cost to just go racing is I would say that it's attainable for most people. If you're able to save up money and set some money aside, it's definitely attainable. At least one or two races for sure. Now, a whole
Yeah.
weekend might be a little bit harder for most people, but definitely like a day of racing. I think if you can save up enough to do a track day, you should be good to. It's going to be pretty much the same thing to do
Yep.
one day of racing, but
Yeah, there's
um,
certainly an upfront cost, just like, AMA membership, blah blah blah, transponder
mhm,
rental. Um, but then after you sort of prep the bike, you put all that money into whatever your bike prep. Got your Weir membership or AMA membership, etc. That cost is that's down the way. So now if you get into more than one racing, then you're not getting hammered every. You do, I think you do go through tires, honestly, faster. That's probably the bigger cost in my book after once you're into the season of racing, because I mean you don't want to go out on like it's a judgment call also. I mean there's been a couple times I've gone out racing on tires which were not brand new. um some of it has to do with confidence, some of it obviously has to do with tire wear as well. So it's one of those things that depending on which tracks you go to, I mean Tally's going to eat up tires like you wouldn't
mhm.
believe, but with at like a Barber you get a whole weekend of racing, plus practices probably on the same set of tires because the track is, as long as your pressures are right, it's so gentle, on tire wear. So,
Yeah, tires are gonna or that's the biggest thing right there. And
oh yeah.
yeah, my idea getting into it was to race on a budget. So most weekends I would have an old set of tires, which would be my practice set, and then I
Hmm.
have a spare set of wheels, and then I would have my race set, and then I would just buy a set and then just run that set for each race. And that's how I saved a couple dollars. But if you have a little bit more money to spend, then some people will throw on brand new tires, every race. There's some people that do that, but
Right.
yeah, like I said, I'm on the budget, so I'm trying to stretch everything out. Um, Also, over the weekend too, another cost that I was able to pretty much cut in half was I bought a trailer. Um, because earlier in the season, just me and my family, we would go and just get a hotel for the night just because it was
Okay.
convenient. But once again,
Hmm.
that's adding to the cost now, and we're getting out of the budget. But
Yep.
yeah, I saved up a little bit, and we bought a trailer, and we pretty much, I mean, it's just a utility trailer, a 7x14, and then we pretty much built it to be like a toy hauler camper type of deal.
Yep.
And we did that for a couple $1,000s, but understanding that I'm going to keep racing, I mean, we're gonna make that money back in savings because hotels were tearing us up after a while
Oh
for
yeah.
weekends with
Right.
hotel travel, pulling the trailer up there. I mean, it was definitely adding up. But there's ways to cut costs for sure. And with the sport, I mean, you can spend as much as you want because I mean, there's people that I've seen race that showed up with a pickup truck and a bike on the back. And then there's other guys that'll park next to them with the toy hauler with two bikes and a crew. So you can put as
Yeah.
much as you want to into it, but it can be done on a budget. Just it's the in a sport like this, I mean, the capital, it can make a difference, but you definitely
Hmm.
can do it on a budget.
Yeah, and any way you can save money, I mean, I'm all about that too. it is an expensive sport though. I mean, in terms of like even if you just do track days, if you do a lot of track days, you're kind of seeing the same things where if, instead of spending hotel costs, you buy a trailer. Even like again, we're in the same boat. We have a utility trailer that just
Hmm.
hunker down there, at night. That's cheaper than a hotel room. So how's the joke go? You know how to become a millionaire in racing. Well, you got to start off as a multimillionaire. So
Yeah.
the money just drains, out, both for track
Yep.
days and, and racing. The biggest thing in my opinion is the tires. You go through tires a lot more. Once your bike is all prepped and you've paid all the kind of annual fees, then you tend to spend more money on tires. But then, if you do a lot of track days, it's not like those tires are shot. I mean, they're perfectly good for doing track days if you've run a couple of races on them. So I did that, and my first year racing, I tend to have, not all the time, but I would have kind of newish tires for a race. But I'd be doing it, 2 or 3 track days in a row. So it's like those tires are perfectly good. So they never went to waste. I'll say that. But I did have quite a few tires at one time, and then it's like, let's see which takeoff am I going to use for this track day. Oh, I think I'll use that one, etc. So it's
Yeah,
interesting.
exactly. I mean, yeah, that's what I do too. I'll like set out my race set after I use it, then that will then become my practice set, and then I'll grab another set and
That's
then
right.
just keep rotating.
You bet.
Yeah, because yeah, you have to cut cost. I mean, if you're doing it on the budget, you have to cut costs wherever you can, and that tires is huge. Absolutely.
Yeah, they ain't cheap, man. I'll tell you what. So need
Nope.
to get a job at like Dunlop or Michelin or something, have a get even bigger discount on
Oh,
tires or
yeah.
something. So
I'm telling you, and it's a double-edged sword because the better you get, the faster you shred them.
that's you got that right. It's amazing how you burn through tires, and it's at that
Hmm.
pace. Yeah, even that one rain, actually, well, that day it rained at Tally. I mean, those rain tires were I had done a couple track day laps on them, but they were in pretty good shape. After 2 races in the rain, I'm like, looked at the tire and like, holy crap, this thing is it was pretty worn. So
Yep.
what did you expect when you started racing besides just, I want to race, like and did you kind of meet your objectives or your expectations?
Um, Going into it, I don't know. I set like a really unrealistic expectation, which was like I want to get a podium. Like my goal,
Huh?
it's like my goal is to get a podium, and it eventually happened. But
Yeah.
I found out like real quick that was just it was just not gonna happen, at least as quickly as I thought it was. So
Hmm.
after getting humbled, my objective definitely changed, and it just became, just to run my own race, to run my own lines and stop worrying so much about what other people were doing, because I mean, at the end of the day, we're riding sport bikes, or we're riding fast bikes, and we want to do our best, and we want to get results, right? Because when we get results, it's like, well, I have arrived, right? Like this is what I
Yeah,
wanted.
that's right.
This is what the point was, right? To get this result. So this is what I have done. But um yeah, like going in that first weekend, I was like, I want a podium. And then after that first race, I was like, yeah, let me change my mindset a little bit, because it's not where it needs to be for where I am, being, just a brand new guy. But like I said, it quickly switched to just, stay in my lane, focus on what I need to focus on, which is myself and my lines and my riding. And when I started to do that, then the podium started to come, because
Hmm.
it's so strange. And being a coach, I'm sure you've talked to people about this too, but it's just so weird how our minds like process things, and when we try to think about too much, or we focus on the wrong things, it affects our performance. And it's so weird how that happens. But for me, whenever I just take a step back and I just simplify my expectations and say, like, like I just said, that's what I'm going to do, then um my flow got better, my thoughts got clearer, my riding got a lot smoother, and then I started, actually battling and then started getting results. And it was just such a strange thing.
No, man, you hit on some points that are like, dead on. I mean, first of all, in terms of like staying in your lane, ride your own race. I mean, I know it's a race, and you are obviously it's a competitive event. You're racing against other riders, but it's really like, yeah, I can't emphasize that enough. Just to people, just ride your own ride, and do what you
Mhm.
can. Obviously, pass people when you can, but just kind of you got to just keep realistic expectations. And certainly the other thing you mentioned about you could certainly overthink things, and I certainly had that problem a lot last year, where it's just I was not comfortable with my riding, and I'm like looking at what's different, how to change things, and you start to basically overanalyze things, and when you like paralysis by analysis, where it's like, and then it just stops becoming fun. So I mean, like one thing for this year, I'm just gonna like whatever race and let the chips fall where they may. Just kind of try to enjoy riding more and racing more. And it's like if I finish dead last, who cares? I mean, I'm just out there just really to have fun and just quit overthinking everything. That's kind of what my plan is for this year. But yeah, that is I can't agree with more with what you just said. So
Yeah, and when you do that, like I said, everything else just will come together after that. And don't for anybody that's new to it, don't focus on other people so much. If somebody passes you or somebody's having a lot better day than you, like you said, don't focus on them because it's just going to cloud what you need to do. Just focus on
right,
you. Don't get bummed out that there's people faster than you, because there's always going to be people faster than any of us,
always.
right?
Or the other thing, like, how
Always.
often have you tried to like,
Mhm.
whatever you have some lap time and you're trying to beat that, and you keep pushing, and your lap times just get worse, and you're riding,
They get worse.
crappier.
Yeah.
Some of the the best times, like, or some of the fastest times in terms of like riding is like where you're not thinking things, where it's like easy, and then you're just like riding, hitting your marks, having fun, and then you look at your timer like, holy crap, you're like, how did I do that? That was like, where'd this come from? Those it's the more you push, sometimes the worse it can be. Certainly you need to kind of push and ride closer to your limit when you're racing, but sometimes, like you said, sometimes you take a step back, you just like ride the bike, don't overthink it, and good results can happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, talking, with limits too, I'd say that's also another huge benefit to racing, because I've pretty much been involved in competition my entire life.
Mhm.
And when I've been practicing for things, for let's use triathlons for example, which I've recently done a couple of those too.
Oh,
And
nice.
when you're practicing, it's so hard to push yourself to, about 100%. And I think you actually did touch on this in your last video too. But it's in a practice environment, it's really hard to push yourself to your maximum, because in a race there's certain conditions that you can't recreate, whether that be like stress, and then your adrenaline's
Hmm.
going and you're trying to catch everyone else. And with racing for me, I feel like it helped me find another gear that I didn't have before, because I pushed myself to that level. And
Right.
it was such a weird thing, because this year, so last year actually, now it was the new year now apparently. um when I started racing, Jennings GP is my home track, and
Okay.
throughout the entire time I was racing, I did not go to Jennings. And before I left Jennings, I was probably around like a 128 or somewhere in there.
Okay.
Went racing for the entire season, and then once the Weir season was over, I went back to Jennings for just a regular track day, and then my time dropped down to a 124. Um,
Yeah,
and
that's
then
that's good.
more,
That's great.
yeah, and then more recently, the last time I was there, I just ran a 123.02, which I'm
Oh man,
actually pretty mad about. I'm pretty mad about
that's
that.
right. That 0.3 of a second.
But
So
but but it was such a weird thing, because I was running the 24s when I was previously doing 28s, but I wasn't pushing to like do those 24s. It's just that the racing, it brought me to a different level that track days would have never brought me to,
Yes.
And then going back to the track days, that speed, where say I'm at a race, say I'm at like 95, and then at the track day, I'm hanging around like 60, 75%, but
Hmm.
the pace is just so much faster because now I'm just a lot more comfortable with going a lot faster just on average. And
Oh yeah.
yeah, like I said, I think it's just because when you get in that race, you push to that extreme limit, which for me, like I said, I did not even know that I was capable of like going some of the speeds and doing some of the things that I've done. But it's the environment, and it's just part of the natural progression. And then when you go back to do the track days and everything, it's just so strange that you find that extra gear and you just find that speed. And like I said, I'm a racing fan too, and it through that process, it's become like so apparent how so many young kids nowadays are, 14, 15-year olds, professional racers that go that fast. And it's that same thing. They spend, 10, 12 years of their life just racing, and then they're slowly just building up that speed, and then finding those new gears over time, over time, over time. And then when they get to practice, I mean, it's a casual day for them is still going to be an absolutely blistering speed,
Oh yeah.
if that
I mean,
makes
well,
any
just
sense.
think about when you first, got on the track and like you go into turn one at Jennings, it probably like your first day at the track, you're probably going through into there like, braking well before the start finish line and going into turn one at 40 miles an hour, and thinking like, oh my God, I'm going to die, and I can't lean the bike over. But once you sort of kind of get into that rhythm, you identify where your braking markers and basically figure out how hard you can push going into that turn, try to get a feel for what the bike is doing, and then it becomes natural. So that's whatever that sensation of speed for
Hmm.
all the turns on a track, that just becomes kind of commonplace. And a lot of that
Yeah,
really has
it's
to just do with
great.
seat time. I mean, just putting seat time in and getting into that rhythm where you're. I know everyone knows how to ride the bike, but just being familiar with how the bike is performing around on the track, that you just get used to that. Like you can almost go through any turns like, what am I doing going through this turn at 60 when I should be at I should be giving it more gas, etc. I mean, you have that kind of not muscle memory, but it's like that where you know that you should be here, you should be on this line, it should be going through, you should be in this gear. All these things, they just become second nature after a while, just because of repetition, really, and knowing what you can and can't, mostly what you can get away with. Not too often do you learn what you can't get away with, because that usually results in a, the bike going down. Or, I mean, the most benign form is like you lose the front, maybe go off on the grass or whatever. It's like, okay, well that's where the limit is for in terms of my riding this bike on that track. So it's all good stuff, but just really just the repetition is fantastic.
Yeah, and with the racing too, for me, it was like you're going a lot faster, and it really builds your confidence in the bike because most of the time the bike is going to be able to do more than we could ever ask for it.
Yes.
And yeah, when you're racing, you're pushing that bike further, and every time you push that bike a little bit further, it builds your confidence a little bit. It's like, well, I went into this turn, 5 miles per hour faster, and the bike was still hooked in, right?
Yeah.
Right. So that with that confidence that you will gain from racing too, and like you said, just that just getting comfortable going faster, like your perception of speed changes as well, and just
Oh
the way
yeah.
your mind processes things. If you want to develop your skill with riding a motorcycle, on a track, I mean, racing it's going to be so beneficial, and you learn so much about yourself doing it, and you just push yourself to a level that I mean, you're going to gain so much confidence, and you're going to push yourself to a level that you didn't even know was possible.
So is that obviously that's sort of like to change your riding if you're just doing a track day because of this familiarization with that sensation of speed. I mean, do you kind of view track days a little differently that after you've done racing?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So before I raced, and I would imagine it's the same thing for most people, but before I raced, and the track day was the race, right? The track day was the race. You show up and you're like, I'm gonna excuse me. You're like, I'm gonna fire up my lap timer, and then I'm racing myself, and if somebody passes me, then I'm gonna go after him, and I'm chasing these times all day, right? At least that
Yeah,
was my mindset. Actually, I don't know if everybody thinks that, but that was my mindset. And when I started racing, uh, you understand, right, that racing has a purpose, and then the track day has a purpose. And
sure.
now I understand that if I'm at the track day, I'm not chasing times, because that's, for me anyways, that's not what it's for. The track day is to get comfortable on my bike, get comfortable with my new setup, make changes, and see if I can find time here and there, try new tires, work on my body position, and not necessarily even chase time. If I'm feeling good and I got it dialed in, and it's an open track, not a whole lot of guys out, then yeah, I might chase a little bit of time, sure. But I understand that the purpose of the track day is to practice, right? It's not a race.
Yeah.
The race is to race.
Yeah, certainly. There's dudes, man. They see the med wrist at freaking track day. It's like,
Mhm.
and I'm guilty of that too. But I guess over the last couple of years, when I'm a track, I know there's always going to be people fashioning you, whether it's bike or talent, regardless. And it's like I'm just gonna work on my shit and like let if someone passes me and I'm behind them going into turn one. Typically I'll be like, oh, let me see what they're doing. If they're coming out or getting on the gas sooner, and they going up a hill or in the next turn faster, kind of making a mental note. It's like I tried that session, but like, okay, maybe I can get on the gas a little bit sooner. Maybe you know at the start of the apron as opposed to at the end of the apron, and just give it a little more gas, and just little things like here and there. But it's really just practice. Ultimately, you just get comfortable on the bike, build those skills up, um, so that when race day comes, at least you've got all these miles, all these laps, on the bike, and you're ready to roll. So that's I would certainly say. And now, of course, that's probably, that may be one of the big expenses with doing racing, is like all the prep in terms of the track time that you need, so
Mhm.
that you're familiar with getting
Yeah,
into a
so you're
race and
comfortable.
being comfortable. That's right.
Yeah, have to be, definitely want to be as comfortable as possible. Like I said, I showed up to a couple of the easier tracks, like Roebling, Talladega, and it was my first time there. And like it, definitely a couple track days would have made my experience a little bit better, for
Sure.
sure.
Yeah. Oh no,
Absolutely, they
I
would
don't
have.
understand how people do that. Like, Xavi
Mhm.
Flores. I've never seen any of these tracks in the U.S. And after like three practice sessions, he's already up near P1, or almost qualifying on
Just
pole.
yeah,
I mean,
just shows up,
that's just
shows up and
no.
wins.
I mean, that's just ridiculous talent. I mean, someone can just knows how to read a track and see how other people get around, and that's a talent I don't have. I'm a slow learner by it's just takes me a lot of repetition and getting into a groove to make small improvements. So anything else in terms of like current anything what people should be aware of in terms of getting into racing that you think of?
Yeah, I mean, just understand that it's something that's going to take a lot of preparation. It's going to take a lot of time to get ready, and it may seem like a lot, but I promise anybody that's listening, if I can do it, I mean, there's no reason that
Right.
there's no one else that can't do it. Like
That's right.
literally,
We've all
like if
done
I
it.
got my stuff together and got it done, anyone can. So like I said, don't let the rule book scare you away. Don't let the rules scare you away. Don't let the technical requirements scare you away. It's all doable, and there's so many resources. Like Andy said, that I mean, you can find a video on how to do most of the stuff you need. And if there's not a video for something, then hop on the forums. Wira has a forum where you can go
Yep.
on there and ask anything, and these guys know absolutely everything to do with a bike. Any question you have, go there, watch videos, and just find answers. I mean, there's people that are willing to help you and get you on the track because we love racing, we love the sport, and we want to see the sport grow. So just
Yep.
don't for yeah, I just say don't be discouraged by all the things that it takes to get there, because when you get there, trust me, you will be so happy that you put in the effort. Just trust, because there's just like everyone tells you, it's addicting because there's nothing like racing. And like I've done all different types of racing, and nothing compares to racing this freaking super stock 600 right here. I mean, it's just I can't even explain the the
It is a
feelings,
blast
being on track.
for sure. So yeah, good. So how did ultimately how did your season end up? How did you end up finishing up this last 2023 season?
So it's my first season, and it went pretty good, I'd say. Got through without any injuries, without any crashes, so that was huge.
Yeah, it is.
Um, that was huge, and I was running B and C super stock, but I also ran superbike. Like every now and then, I would just hop in the superbike class
Hmm.
because you can race a class up, but you can't race a class down.
Yes.
And I ended up finishing out fourth in the B super stock, the Atlantic coastal region.
Okay.
Not sure
Great.
how because, like I said, I got a couple podiums here and there. So I got points, and I ended up finishing fourth in that particular division. But so I mean, I'm really happy with it, and that was just I missed a lot of the season too because just finances, and it costs a lot to chase an entire season. There's some people that do it, but
I
I'm
I
not in
hear
a
you,
position
man.
to do that right now.
Oh yeah, some
um,
people they'll run every race in the Atlantic Coast Conference, and I mean they're going all the way from Nelson Ledges down to Roebling Road and everywhere in between. I guess,
mhm,
yeah, I certainly focused on kind of mid central. That's those tracks like Tally Barber. Unfortunately, Road Atlanta. I don't mind Road Atlanta in terms of like the track. It's just that the grid can be ridiculous, and in Road Atlanta because everyone wants to race there.
mhm.
But yeah, I mean that's great, and just it's so some people can afford to do all that, but I mean that is certainly a commitment, not just time, but money to do all that traveling to the different tracks for sure. So
Mm,
would I
yeah.
guess in terms go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say that, and that's another thing too. The seasons are long, so if you're just getting into it, I mean, don't think that coming into this you have to do every single race. You don't have to do every single race. You don't have to do every single round. Just pick a couple dates, a couple races that work out for you at a couple tracks you like your first time, and just go do your thing. And that's what I did in this next year. Really trying to get out to Road Atlanta, like you said, because I skipped those rounds because I'd never been
Hmm.
there, and Barber too. I was invited to the Grand National Finals at Barber,
GNF,
but
yeah.
I'd never been there, so I was like, well, I'm going to put a lot of effort to go race there and to get smoked when I really need to focus on getting track time there before I go
But
do
you'll enjoy that such a
that.
Barber is such a wonderful
Yeah.
track. I mean, it's just a lot of
Mhm.
fun. Fortunate to only live, fairly close to the Barber, so that's not like real close, but close
Nice.
enough where it's an easy drive there. Um, Road Atlanta, I kind of mixed opinions about Road Atlanta. I've actually had two crashes there, over whatever the
Mhm.
9 years or 10 years of racing, including one last year. But so I don't really, and still, I don't mind the track. It always sucks ass just to drive through Atlanta, though. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like I think the weir around when was it? Cycle. Oh, another thing, just yeah, Cycle Jam, whatever, 2 years
Cycle Jam,
ago.
yeah.
Um, I left the house. It took 2 hours longer than what GPS said it was going to take, just because of the
Oh, man.
the rat race in Atlanta. I mean, there's some crazy stuff, and then the other thing with with Cycle Jam, it is probably more packed than GNF. Honestly, you could like.
Hmm.
That Saturday, that cycle jam, it was, I mean, there's trailers as far as the eye can see, like everywhere. So,
Yeah, that's what everyone
uh,
was telling me about the cycle jam. Yeah.
so yeah, I like seeing they could have like 3 wave starts, or I've heard stories about some of these classes like B or C races where people are stacked up, all the way into coming into turn 12, so it can be,
Wow.
yeah. I'll well, who knows? And but yeah, the thing with racing, it's like you never know who's going to show up. I mean, honestly, there's been a couple races where like I'm like the only one in the class, so it's like, well, that was easy, but that's boring now. I mean, I guess you want to
Mhm.
race against experts or whatever. Find some. I think that's the most interesting part. Is like if you can find someone else where you're compatible in pace and have a fun race with them. That's really rewarding. You're out there just doing laps, and you're I've had a couple races where it's like the guy. I had one race where I finished second. The guy in front of me, he's up the road by a good 20 seconds. There was like after the first lap, I was like, "There's no way I could catch this guy." And I looked at the
Mhm.
times, and the guy who finished third, he was a good 20 seconds behind me. Still finished the race and whatever, got a podium, but those are kind of boring races, honestly. Did you have one day that was like maybe your most difficult day, racing? Or one, or conversely, one that was like, man, I'm so glad I did this race. It was like that was awesome.
Yeah, there's a couple things come to mind. And I was so for one of the Roebling rounds, and not the ambulance accident because I was
Oh yeah,
actually
yeah,
there
yeah.
for that round
Oh,
too,
good
but
lord.
it
Yeah.
actually wasn't that. Yeah, because both those guys, I mean, they were banged up, but they were fine. The bikes were totaled, but there was another Roebling round that I went to where in the B superbike or super stock race, there was a really bad crash, and that was the biggest race of the weekend. I mean, the grid was packed, and
Mm-hmm.
when we got the flag, and it was so like as we had novice and an expert, so it was
Yep.
packed, and I think like the V8 guys were behind us too. Um,
Yeah.
so we get the flag, and the guy in front of me, he puts his hands up and he starts waving like as soon as we get the green flag. So I gassed it, as you would. And I went around the guy, was looking up, and I saw him put his hand up. So I went around him, but his bike didn't
Mm-hmm.
move and he stayed there for the start. And so the race got red flagged shortly after that. And come to find out, there was a couple guys behind me that ended up running into the back of that guy. And a couple bikes were totaled, a couple riders were banged up, and the guy that got hit, they ended up doing a GoFundMe for him, and they put out a whole lot of information about him, and his name was Mateus Petrati, and he ended up being a guy that was visiting from overseas, like a pretty well known racer overseas that came here.
Mm-hmm.
Just to have some fun and just to go racing and stuff, and I imagine visiting family or something else, I think too. And he got hurt really really bad. Like I said, but they set up the GoFundMe just to help him out. 'Cause just the expenses and everything was going to be just insane to take care of him, and out of the country too. Um, and for me, I say that was kind of that was like a rough day because it put into perspective for me like just how dangerous the sport is. And had
Yeah.
I not swerved that guy, like I could have been just right there next to him in the hospital. And most of these weekends, I have my wife with me, I have my kids with me. And if
Mm-hmm.
something like that happens to me, then my wife can't drive our trailer. She can't drive my truck. She just doesn't know how to do that. She doesn't know how to load the bike, and we would have to figure out, well, how to take care of me, and then how to get her home and get the kids back home for school, and
Mm-hmm.
on top of dealing with the injuries because you're out of work and everything else. And for me, like I said, that really just kind of hit close to home for me because I really felt like it could have been me. And yeah, that was just really put into perspective for me just how these things can happen just at any moment.
Yeah. I've taught to like a race certification class a couple times, and I basically say that there's the two, you know, it's like distinctive one and two, the two most dangerous times on during a race are at the start for things
Hmm.
exactly like what you're saying. And then probably quite further down the list is basically all these bikes going into turn one. Because everyone's trying to funnel into that same line. Yeah, you're not as familiar as like as you were if you were doing laps as opposed to that. But yeah, I've actually seen fatality at at a weir race during the start. Almost the same thing where you're saying guy stalls his bike, another guy ran into him, and then someone, a third rider literally ran right over the chest, chest cavity of rider number two. And yeah, that was a terrible, terrible day. I mean, these things do happen, and it's no one wants to see that happen for sure. Everyone wants to enjoy the sport, but those days do happen. So it's what can you do is just try to avoid the best you can.
Yeah, just try to avoid it the best you can. Make sure that you're following the rules. Your bike is in spec, your gear is all in spec, and just be respectful on the track.
And
Don't
that's
feel
that's
like
why
you
they
have to
say, man,
stay
your bike
in
stalls,
spec.
wave like a madman. It ain't. I've
Hmm.
seen other races where dudes stalled the bike and then they're still there dicking around with the bike, and bikes are just going on both sides of them. I just, this is why well, I don't know. Who knows what other people go through or think, oh, the bike, it was just running, just biking. But this is where these things happen, or it's bad accidents on the grid. And yeah, like you said, if you're 3 rows back and you're freaking full on the gas trying to get
Yeah, you're
by the
not
guy
gonna
next
see.
to you, yeah, you're not going to see it. Or you see someone
Hmm.
suddenly swerve, then next thing you know, you're doing 80 miles an hour into a standing object. So
Hmm.
crazy. So, well, on a bad note, but okay, how about your best day, racing? Try to end on a more positive note. What do you think was your kind of maybe your most rewarding experience at the track?
I mean, like so for me, every round's been good because I've got to drive home on time, drive home with my family, and my bike was in one piece. But I
That's
definitely
great.
say, yeah, I definitely say though, any round that I got a podium, it definitely elevated me. It definitely
Yeah,
boosted the ego a little bit, and I mean, we were podiums, and I don't know if anybody else feels like this, but I feel like we were podiums are a big deal. Especially if you've had to fight for it, because I mean, there's a lot of fast guys there, and it's a
right.
really, really high level of racing there. And if you can show up and do your thing and end up getting one of those podium positions, I mean, man, it means a lot to me, right? It just means that you're doing what you need to do, and you're getting it done, and you're learning.
Yeah.
So yeah, any round I got a podium for sure.
Well, I think, yeah, I mean, I agree that I think it's basically we've kind of overcome, you've had to like get by people, or you've maybe hit a personal best. Some of those things I think are more like, yeah, more the former, when you had to really battle to, I mean, I've had some rewarding, races where I came from seventh to fourth, it's no podium, but I
Mhm.
felt good about where I ended up. Um, like I mentioned before, the one race I finished second where I was like basically riding by myself. I mean, that was like, yeah, great. I got a podium, but that wasn't any huge. I didn't feel like
Yeah.
it was like a huge accomplishment or anything, where the other ones I worked for it, it got around people. Yeah, I've had some of those yeah, I definitely had one race where I was another race at Tower where I was dead last and ended up getting around some people, and it was, I felt good after that. So yeah, that's awesome. And I guess what are your kind of plans for 2024 in terms of what you've had? So you sort of lose, you try to do what you kind of think you're going to do, hit the tracks you can or the races you can. I'm assuming you're probably not going to do like a full season for Atlantic Coast Conference or anything like that, or the Southeast. There's very few people who do, by the way. I mean, there's some people who are chasing that championship. Um, I think everyone has realistic time and money constraints to do that, though.
Yeah. For me, approach is pretty much going to be the same. I'm just going to focus on getting to those other tracks now to kind of expand my range a little bit and expand my experience by checking out Barber and Road Atlanta so that I can
Hmm.
race there. I'm probably going to race less rounds this go around. Probably just try to do one Talladega, maybe two Roebling, and then a Barber, and then like Cycle Jam probably. Um,
Okay.
and then I'm also thinking about just because so most of the races there'll be like a track day before a lot of them. So I'm
Yes.
thinking of just not racing on Sunday and then put that cost into the Friday track day. So get
Okay.
there a little early, yeah, do the Friday track day, and then just race all day Saturday. And then that way I can kind of reserve Sunday just to kind of chill, watch a couple races, and then just have a relaxing time getting back to the house at a decent hour. Because like I said, I'm in
Yeah. So
Florida and getting
you'll
yeah
be all
getting to any
packed
of these
up,
tracks is like
while
6
these other
hours.
races are going
Yeah.
on. So I know a couple people do that also. They just do like one day out of two. If they're feeling sporty to do too. And one of the things like
Hmm.
you just sign up for, let's say, the Saturday races. You do two races or whatever. Like if you're feeling that the weather's going to be perfect and you're really feeling sporty, you can always go that Sunday morning and tack or in
Yep.
registration. And even if you just sign up for another race, you could always add, other races if you really wanted to do that on Sunday. So that's just keep that in mind.
Yep. And then Jennings is actually hosting an endurance race here in about
Oh
2
my
weeks
goodness,
now.
really?
Yeah, and I ended up linking up with a team, Backmarker Racing, and they accepted me, and I'm going to be racing with them for the endurance races at Jennings. We're going to do two of the 3 hour races,
Oh
but they're
my
also doing
god.
a six. Yeah, they're also
That's
doing
a
a
lot of
6 hour
time,
race
man.
on Sunday. It's a lot of seat time, and yeah, we're going to get out there and see how that goes. So try the endurance racing thing too, and see how fun that is. And
Wow.
on our
Hey,
so
that's
on
one
my
way to get, some
yeah,
seat time in, in terms of like practice,
yep,
regardless of your team finishes, wherever they finish. It's like you're gonna get some
mhm,
seat time, that's for sure.
yeah, and on the my other page, Florida Moto Talk, I actually posted just a quick little video from a testing tune that we did there last weekend, and it kind of turned into like a little gear review too because like, of course I ended up crashing like the last session
Oh,
at the
that's
end of
that's
the day.
terrible. Uh,
Yeah, so I took a little clip and ended up turning that into a gear review and then just a quick little thing about just a quick little blurb about some of the time while we were there. But that's over on the Florida Moto Talk, that
okay.
channel.
Yeah, I'll make
Anybody
sure
wants
I
to check it out.
link all your channels, on this page. I guess I mean, it kind of covers a lot of the topics. It was a great talk. Talk about a lot of the this, that, and the other thing. So, I guess any other final kind of closing thoughts on anything we touched on today?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think you like I said, you did a pretty good job with the first video, and hopefully this just answered maybe any other questions or anything else anybody was thinking about with racing, and you just keep making videos, man, so we can keep learning everything there is to learn about
I'll try.
racing.
There was a down year last year, mostly because for a bunch of different reasons. I just there's some personal, some professional, quote professional, but regardless, it
Yeah.
was yesterday was a down. Last year was a down year, so. But 2023 is over. This is a new year. It's like just turn the page. It's like a blank sheet of paper, so we can make it whatever we want it to be. So,
Hmm.
all
Absolutely.
right. Cool, cool. So that was good talking with you, John. So hopefully, best of
Yeah,
luck with
absolutely.
everything next year. I'm sure I'll see you at one of these tracks. Probably either Barber or Tally, maybe Road Atlanta. We'll see. But we'll if I see that gray Kawasaki. What's your number? 333. Is that what it is? Or
333. Yeah.
333? Yeah, there we go. I'll keep an eye out for it. It's, and if I don't have
Absolutely.
the orange jersey on, maybe I'll go out for a ride a little bit. So
Yeah, I'll
anyway,
come
cool.
find you for some coaching too.
Well, that's another thing. I'm gonna be doing a lot less coaching this year. That's
Ah,
I did in the last 3 years. I kind of kept a tally, and I coached 108 days, I think. So that's like whatever 30
mm,
some 34, 33, 34 coaches or 36, I think. Average days coaching per year, and coaching makes you slower. Everyone wants to be a coach, but it really does. I think it does take away from your riding. So I'm gonna definitely dial that down and kind of focus on my own development more this year. So that's saying we can still ride together. So we'll see how it goes.
Oh yeah, we'll
So
link up for sure. Absolutely.
that's awesome.
Come full
All
circle.
right. That's right. I'm sure I'll see you at one of these weird races here or there. So all right. Well, thanks
Sweet.
for the
Yeah,
talk,
thanks.
John.
Yeah, thanks for
So
having
then
me.
now the